Okay, folks, I'm switching computers and in the process switching several things to try to compensate for failure on the normal way of uploading. I made a 15-minute recording which the computer says will take me an hour and a half, 2 hours and a half to be uploaded to YouTube. I don't know what will be said about this one, and frankly I haven't remembered, and therefore I'll have to search to see where this particular recording will be stored on the computer being used now. It's a metaphor too for something I wanted to say, and it shouldn't take too long. And that is that, we're facing a situation where, yet again, some people are seriously wondering about the two-party system, what it truly is, what people believe it is, and what it ought to be, or whether it should be at all. And then we have, yet again, many parties claiming to be the paramount third party, the only one that counts, or what are we going to do? Soon we'll get to say, well, now let's round it off of a super duper, the top four parties, or maybe we would end up like Germany, where it's complicated, and other places where some wish for some miracle to save them from their less binary system. Well, of course, they just simply have binary systems that require the integrity of a mainframe to get the value of pi out to maybe a million places. Too much of anything might be the thing to watch out for. But I'd just like to, this is going to be sloppy. This is for one thing, I'm terribly tired and put upon and so on. But I just want to say I saw some people valiantly trying to make sense of American politics when, for the first time in a while, let's just say what many people think of as the three-party dilemma again. And people can think back to any election where it is thought that a third party was able to throw the election. Some people bitterly blame Teddy Roosevelt for putting a Southerner in office who didn't understand the First Amendment, but nevertheless dragged America kicking and screaming into the First World War, and really reframed the consequence of that war to suit American interests. That is to say, regardless of the fact, for example, that Wilson didn't get what he wanted, the consensus is America won the war and end of story or something. Well, there are a lot of things. And so lately I'm thinking, where are the historians? It used to be, I can remember people said to one another, oh, so-and-so's majoring in history. Oh, okay, well, why didn't he just join a monastery then? It's not so simple. And here's a situation, Frank Sinatra might sing a song, not Where are the Clowns, or Bring in the Clowns. Where are the historians? Well, of course, that can be hilarious, can't they? But there are many things that historians can do, to entertain people. Infotainment, also, But it's not so innocuous as a play on words and names and so on, and to tell you what halfway you know already, because you've been stroked and stroked and stroked, and your level of comfort is just set up for what? Some bag of flour that somebody's selling with some presidential name on it, and saying, that's what I was leading up to, folks. This is the best sack of flour that anybody has ever sold, and that's why we give it the name of the hero of my story that I just told, or something. We pretty much, it's as though someday we'll elect Elon Musk president because of the Tesla or something. Well, of course, by that time, when he might have run, the Tesla will have fallen apart, so he won't get to that point in time. But anyway, so much for history. Well, not yet, because what I'm proposing is this: a wake-up call for historians to take a deep breath and say, okay, let's do some what-ifs. What if people didn't begin to build toward the promotion of Lincoln to head a party to oppose slavery? What if the South had not drawn a line in the sand saying, if you elect Lincoln, it's war? What if, there was war or not? Well, think what might have happened if there was no war. What would happen then? Historians have something to say. And mind you, that was a third party. It was not a third party in the sense that it was up against a two-party system that's still very entrenched. The Republicans and Democrats today represent more that is entrenched than what Lincoln faced, because of issues that seem, I guess you might say, beyond where parties had to go. But what if then Lincoln had not been shot? What if he had been able to persevere in Congress and with prerogatives he already had? What if he had been able to do something about the mess after the war? What if? Well, what I'm suggesting is that we're really selling short the notion of what a third party can do. I'm not saying that somehow I think that a third party can do what needs to be done in America now, but I don't think it's entirely wishful thinking to say, well, it would be, beneficial this way and that. Have historians tell you whether or not people were voting for the man or against slavery, no matter what, or both. And certainly there were those who were voting against the man, against slavery, and or both. But I don't think people have been particularly interested in history because it hasn't been used, dare I say, hasn't been used effectively. And those, for me, are charged words. I choose them because of the way I mean. Use, that is to say, history has not been implemented as a tool to do good, that is, to do something useful and effective. In other words, history hasn't been put to good use. Word choices matter a great deal, and to get at what was happening when people began to see, there's going to be a showdown against slavery. All right, now then, what showdown can legitimately be said to be underway? Is there a formidable minority or a docile majority that is beginning to make up its mind that, well, hell, we'll have to get up. Somebody rang the doorbell, and who's going to the door? Well, you are, honey. Well, but anyway, somebody's got to get up and go to the door because the doorbell rang. Well, that's sort of like, a bunch of firemen loafing around. Oh, look, there's an alarm. Who is it? It's the Wicked Witch of the Southeast. Oh, that's all right, let her burn. And someone said, well, you see, that's data overload. Well, but except for one thing. To go to the fire, you'd have to know where it is. You need Anyway, what I'm saying is, you need to use effectively what historians have to choose from. People look back on the Civil War and they say, well, okay, so Lincoln was put forward, the head of a new party, and then that somehow that was just right for those times. Well, now, what about today? To return to my terribly humorous remarks about answering the doorbell, duty calls, you get out of bed even faster, right? But what happens if somehow the U.S. is literally headed for what every politician always claims? Have you ever heard somebody say, this is the most important election of my times and yours? You know what kind of politician he is then. He's so accomplished that he speaks of himself just when he ought to. He doesn't say, this is your date with history. You have to go out and vote for me. Well, you mark him off if there's somebody else. But we have Hobson's choices, don't we? We still do. Or can it be said that we have the equivalent of someone, never mind the deals people make that have made people sick? Have we really reached the point in time when anybody could really stand up against the deep state? For years, people were hemming and hawing about slavery. And even today, the lost cause of what? States' rights, or you name it, whatever. Hemming and hawing, and finally things began to gel, and things were sharpening and whatever. The introduction of new territories as states really put an edge on events, and so eventually it really did come down to that contest between those who would tolerate slavery and those who would not. What is it today that could be like a consensus? Now, some would say, well, you'll always have apples and oranges. No snapshot or even a short movie in time can be equated exactly to some other time, and so therefore trying to draw a conclusion from the Civil War, the lead up to the Civil War and the aftermath and the events and everything, we don't have exactly that, so we can't do anything with it. Well, if that might be true, then we don't have any use for history at all. Because if fundamentally history is what, infotainment? What is it? If we can't draw lessons from the past, the past is worthless if you can't draw lessons from it, unless what you say. Well, yeah, did you have a good life? Well, I live now 98 years, and I can tell you, I enjoyed the first 30 of them. Okay, and so, but now what? I think this is the first time in years when things have really come close to a time when people could reach a durable consensus about the extraneous nature of deadwood politicians. It's as though that the house that will not stand is not on sand, it's just been destroyed and hollowed out by termites. You know, no matter how much sand there is, you know, people in Florida know how to build skyscrapers. They can build skyscrapers on sand, right there on the beach. And it's as though the technology and the wherewithal, the vested interests, have learned to build a huge edifice to themselves, and they call it a feature of democracy. They lie about what we have and call what we have really a democracy when it's not exactly that. At the same time, everybody's erudite enough to know that if you make everything a direct democracy, then you don't have a republic, and they will explain why a republic is better. But then, of course, what people are talking about is the republic rigged. And that is to say, have people gamed the democratic system. Does that mean it's got to get worse before it gets better, that someday America will have its own Bastille Day when the regime is overturned because it really didn't meet the real definitions of democracy? I don't think it's that bad yet. And because it's not that bad, I really wonder, well now, if someone rings the door at 2 a.m., do you get up and answer the door? Could it be somebody, ring the doorbell because something we don't know about puts them at your door at that hour? Or do we just say, nobody at the door at this hour is welcome? Most people, would answer the door. And are we in that situation now where a comical analogy means that you've got to find out who the hell is ringing the doorbell at 2 in the morning? Authorities would have what? A megaphone or your phone number or something, Who would only ring the doorbell? Well, nowadays, of course, a lot of people have a camera that aims at any person at the door. Voila! End of crisis altogether. Well, that's not the idea. The idea, what do you do when things are, a terrible dilemma? Is someone next door dragging over half dead to say his house is on fire, or what? I don't know what to tell you to explain what I mean, but it does involve having people motivated the same way they were when they say, well, let's see, this whole arrangement is rigged. We're going to put forward a new party and a new man. And of course, you know how funny thing is. It funny then that Nixon had his Southern strategy and the South is now amazingly Republican? Is that what being a Republican is all about? What some people stand for now? And what? The Democratic Party stood for things that nobody has talked about with any cogency or relevance that I know of. It's what the Democratic Party used to stand for has been reduced to a kind of hollow mantra of some sort about bromides, you know, but both parties now are known for deal making. LBJ and right before Teddy, there were the trust makers. Teddy busted up the trust. And, of course, that was following in a tenuous way. All of that followed after the Civil War, even though you know, things were pretty rocky all the way through until the turn of the century. But we have now two parties that reflect the opportunism that has slowly hollowed out both of them. You know, and it is kind of a miracle, like a mansion or a skyscraper that great technology has put right on the sands of Florida. Oh, I shouldn't say that. It could be quick. Tell me what other sands. I can't think of any offhand that match the beaches of Florida. But anyway, I know there's stuff done out in San Francisco. Although one of the best stories around is trying to save that tower that's leaning over, but that's another story. A good one, I guess, to find out what are they going to do. But anyway, so the complexity of history is that you do run into things like that. You can say this house won't stand against, you know, divided against itself, and what, a house won't stand when it's built on sand. And yet we know that, you know, you can build anything on sand now. Apparently, maybe you shouldn't, but you do, you know, and yada yada yada. Well, the question remains: are we up against something that we can all agree is a problem? Would that be the nattering nabob, left and right? I just watched a program where the mouths were running at, you know, breakneck speed, any way you want to measure, in their own terms or that of others, breakneck speed in a sense, and fundamentally going nowhere. I'm not against people talking tactics, but I'd rather talk about issues, but that doesn't mean some people shouldn't talk about tactics. You know, it's an imperative. But anyway, for example, I mentioned Roku for Kennedy. I haven't seen or heard of anything since. But anyway, it's time for historians. I've just improved on normalcy. We'll call them historians. It's time for historians to look at third-party stuff that really counted, like Lincoln. Who on the Democratic side would exemplify something like that? It would, I guess, have to be FDR. Only he did not, you know, he was not a third-party candidate. I think, you know, people have to find out whether this is true. Is it true that the man matters, or the times, the events, the context where somebody is able to be nominally in charge of something larger than himself, you know, or herself? But we're not doing it because everybody is tearing into each other as if it doesn't matter to do that, you know. It doesn't matter in a sense. The country can have some sort of inertia, you know, certain people here more or less doing stuff and others over there doing something, and kind of having a lack of a consensus abide because people are satisfied with it. But I don't think that is going to solve the burning issues. And there are people who are informed on world events who think that America is really going to depend more and more on the internet for starters. Now that gives a hint about, what has to be done, and so much, I think, comes back to the concept that's been thrown off the face of the earth, really, and that is something called citizenship. That's something secular, but something matters in the same sense that people say they believe in something else. Not sure that matters then. But if it does, then an analogy, it means that oh, thank you.
You're a whack-a-mole.
Could you close the door?
Sorry.
Thank you. That's the little old lady I like. One of her complaints is that my door is wide open, blown off its hinges, and that I'm laid to waste in this place, and so on. So very often I have to ask her to close the door after she delivers breakfast. Breakfast has turned out to be, now that I have the microwave, they deliver half-cooked sausage. I could put the sausage in the microwave and cook it and then have that with a biscuit, but I never have quite done that because I'm sick of sausage. A year of sausages, nothing else. Not much for breakfast. I just throw it away. But what was I saying? I've forgotten. Something to the effect that there's no consensus. And also I can say this is an attempt to get this diatribe of mine uploaded. The internet slowed down, and I just want people to think in terms of history and draw from history what worked then and what didn't work, and put that together with things that could work now and come up with something better than the two-party system. That's the first thing that I would say needs to change. Now then, if the two-party system is to change, then it will have to be threatened with genuine competition. That doesn't mean that things could turn out so very well as to have Lincoln suddenly on the scene, or something like that. Well, who would prevail now, and what would he vanquish? If the two-party system were, overturned, well, what would a third party do? Well, he'd actually be faced with the same problems that people trying to face with a two-party system. Namely, we don't seem to know what to do about immigration. We don't seem to know what to do about the economy. We don't seem to know even how to attend to the fallout from our failing economy, namely people who are penniless, living in the streets in a tent or whatever, completely wiped out, unable to compete. There are some who say things that are not given enough face time to see, what you're really saying is you will drive them off the cliff. That's what some are actually saying, but they don't think they're saying that. So solutions to all those problems doesn't occur just because you elect anybody from a third, fourth, or fifth party, or one of the two main ones. But my point is, even if someone is elected in terms of the two parties. Or even if someone is elected because the election is thrown by a third party contender who doesn't win, then the competition has been, I would say, formidable enough for each of the two parties to get better. Or, and this is what I hope for, the next time it's going to get even more competition. The two parties will get even more competition. There'll come a day when a third party wins outright. It could happen with breathtaking speed that we move to the point where a third party beats anybody else, as happened in Lincoln's day. Historians can point out why that happened and why it can't happen now, or the other way around, depending on really the kaleidoscope one chooses to look into. And history offers a kaleidoscope. Okay, I've said more than enough. Now then, my question now is, how do I stay connected? I can't. Recently, politics intervened and the internet here failed. And so it could take 2 hours or even longer for this to upload. 31 minutes and counting. The last connection they made recently was Sardis. That's the one that particularly bad some time ago. Allegedly made up of people involved as retired first responders. Well, that is a euphemism, if you know what I mean. I can tell you that has fallen into the hands of Proud Boys and not only that problem, but some others. You know, this is the home of the first Tea Party of modern times. They named what they did one day after the Tea Party, you know, in Boston years ago, but it wasn't the same in Alabama as it was in Boston. But anyway, that's local misfortune, and so I'm going to try to upload this, but only because I can just let the computer sit here for 2.5 hours like I did for a recent upload for a private message. This isn't going to be private, but it might take the same pathway from YouTube, and that's the slow part. There's nothing I can do about it. That would be like, you know, making a decree that they can't steal stuff that's mailed to me, which is what they do at the front desk. Notably the package from Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's simply not been delivered. What they did from the kitchen, they've delivered nearly raw sausage, pork sausage. They used to go ahead and cook it, now they don't. But I'm not going to mess up with pork cube. Alright, 33.59 now. Just turned 34. Let me say this is intended for X.com. A bunch of friendly people. I don't know what I can make of X.com. I'm saddened by Facebook, and the geniuses at Facebook now claim that they can take credit for something as a result. I think that's par. Anyway, I'd wish the good people anywhere to do better and to prosper as a result, and for miscreants to have a few second thoughts, and maybe we'd all be better off. Bye for now, and as I like to say, have fun, stay safe.